Fox 5 and Hot 97 present Street Soldiers with Lisa Evers.
I'm so glad you're joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on the credibility crisis surrounding the Sean Diddy Combs case. I'm your host, Lisa Evers. In this episode, we're talking about the social media tsunami of allegations, claims, and narratives coming from many different directions, in and out of the courtroom. How do we know what to believe? The social media frenzy surrounding Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking RICO case has been swirling for months. Now that a trial date has been set, his court appearances draw an army of national and international media. Judge Arun Subramanian has issued a gag order on Diddy's legal defense team as well as federal prosecutors. It won't stop the bloggers and podcasters and their online commentary, but it will ban defense lawyers and prosecutors from interviews and leaks, keeping their arguments in the courtroom, says criminal defense attorney Philip Hamilton.
Where the gag order may not, hurt, it certainly helps in the sense of like trying to keep a lot of this stuff just a little bit more together and within the courtroom instead of being leaked out into the press.
Posting accusations against Diddy and other celebrities allegedly connected to him and making outrageous claims can earn a podcaster many new followers and a new income stream. But sometimes they go too far. Veteran hip-hop journalist Rob Markman says people need to go to trusted media sources.
And this is big for hip-hop. This is huge. This is a bombshell. It is damaging. Diddy is one of the architects of how we do business in hip hop. So to see this come to light is hurtful for a lot of people who are inspired by him.
The credibility of Diddy's accusers has been challenged too, most often in the court of public opinion. Many came forward in the months following Cassie Ventura's multi-million-dollar civil lawsuit after years of silence, leading some to believe they were just after the money. But civil litigator Ariel Mitchell, whose clients include Diddy accusers, says they had no other choice.
What other source do we have to get justice? Again, if you have a victim, if the police and the government do not move forward with a criminal case, you're left with nothing but civil court, and civil court is money. So when people say people are just doing this for a check, it's not necessarily that. It's their only option.
There's a lot to this. Let's take it right to our panel. Joining me is Rob Markman. He's the host of Just My Thoughts. You can find it on YouTube. He's across all the social media platforms, of course, Instagram, at Rob Markman. Rob, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Also with us is Ariel Mitchell. She's a civil litigation attorney. She represents victims and survivors in lawsuits against Diddy. Ariel, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Nice seeing you again, Lisa.
We appreciate it. Also with us is Philip Hamilton. He's a criminal defense attorney and managing partner in the Hamilton Clark LLP law firm. Phil, thank you so much for being with us.
Always good to be with you, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Phil, I want to start with you on this so we know what we're talking about. Most people don't understand or don't seem to understand that there's a difference between civil cases and criminal cases. What do you see happening?
I mean, the general distinction clearly with civil and criminal cases is always, in many respects going to be the consequences of the potential outcome. Clearly if there's a conviction in a criminal case and as concerns the racketeering case that Diddy is dealing with right now, I mean, you're looking at facing significant jail time. I mean, we've had these discussions prior, but can be looking anywhere from, 20 to 30 years if certain counts start to get consect. Just a lot of jail time, right? Whereas with a lot of the civil suits, which of course there are much more of than just the one racketeering case that is currently pending against him. At this point, we're looking at, potentially millions of dollars that can ultimately have to be paid out. We're looking at other judgments as against him that will make life a little more fiscally difficult for him than he's been accustomed to since at least 1993 or 1994. And just a lot, of course, from the reputational standpoint, these civil suits piling up certainly aren't helping, I think, in that realm. But also when we look at that initial suit that was brought by Cassie, we recognize that that was kind of the foundational step, I think, for the government taking a much closer look into just what was going on with Diddy. So I do think that there's, of course, an overlap and a potential danger there for Diddy, that the more these civil allegations that come out, the more the government may start looking into other allegations that we may not be seeing on the indictment as it has been filed now. Maybe we see a superseding indictment later outlining more charges.
Ariel, when you represent some of the victims, the survivors who claim that they were victimized by Diddy, what do you look for when they come to you before you decide to take on these cases?
So in this scenario, I fielded about 20 calls. I've only taken on 3 individuals out of that 20. What I look for is, do they have corroborating evidence? Is there something other than just the testimony that they're giving me to corroborate what happened in them? Are there other witnesses? Are there any other hard documents like police reports, hospital records, things of that nature? In one of the cases, the young lady not only had pictures, she had a magazine from 20 years ago. So that's pretty important. In my new case, this lady has therapy records, she has hospital records, she has police reports. And in my next case, she maintained all of the documents, including her flight and her flight from 2006. So things of that nature are what I am looking for when I'm taking on a case for civil litigation, because I need something other than the testimony, because it is a all he say, she say situation when we're talking about these civil claims. Everybody who has made a civil claim against Mr. Combs is a he say, she say. It's just what other documentation do they have to support and bolster their claims.
Rob, you talk about what happens in hip hop. You talk about what happens in a lot of these issues that are affecting our community and also, becoming the biggest stories. Is this case with Diddy the biggest thing?
This is a huge deal. This is a super huge deal, this case with Diddy. Diddy is one of the architects, musically and business-wise, of how we operate in the music business today, how we operate in hip-hop. The beats that we use, the samples that we use, the swag, the way that we dress, the things that we drink, what's in vogue, what's in style. Diddy is an architect of that and has influenced a whole generation of hip-hop and music moguls, artists, music moguls, and influenced fans. With that, we can recognize that and recognize his greatness as a musician and an artist and a curator of hip hop and a businessman, but not let that blind us to what the facts are, and especially as the facts start rolling out. And it hurts us when we see folks like Diddy, Russell Simmons, Suge Knight, though the crimes that Suge Knight were convicted of were not of a sexual nature. It's a different type of crime. These were all architects. These were the guys who taught us and led the way for us how to be great in this generation of hip hop. But we also have to now look at these examples of these things that they were doing behind closed doors as an example of this is not okay, this is not acceptable. I just want to make one distinction too, because while this is a hip hop case because of who Diddy is, this is also indicative of a wider problem in entertainment in Hollywood, Harvey Weinstein, of just men who rise to power and the abuse of that power. So, I think hip hop has to hold hip hop accountable in this way, but let's not lose sight and act like this is just a hip hop problem. This is an American problem. This is going on all throughout the entertainment industry, and we got to do better.
Stay with us. There's more to come. Phil, you've tried federal cases in the Southern District Court where the Diddy RICO case is being tried. In terms of the publicity surrounding it, is it possible that cannot affect the case when it already has?
I mean, you're going to do your best in any voir dire to try to root those potential jurors out, right? The ones that are just diehards in TMZ, getting their media from Entertainment Tonight, just all of the talk shows, all of the radio shows, the podcasts that are going into the facts. Clearly, you're going to both, I think from the government standpoint and the defense standpoint, be a little weary about jurors like that. But I think to the extent that you're not living under a rock, it's going to be kind of difficult to find people that don't know about either Diddy himself, based on everything that Rob said in the last segment. I mean, just from, again, 1993 and bringing Bad Boy up into just legendary echelons of the music industry, you're going to know who he is. And I think it's going to be difficult to find jurors who don't know him. Even if they weren't the biggest hip hop fans, you know the man. You're going to see it in the news. And so, of course, that's going to make it, I think, difficult when you are trying to find a fair and impartial jury to hear these allegations, both on the civil side and on the criminal side. But at the end of the day, having tried press cases myself before, clearly we've seen a lot of press cases tried, throughout the nation. It's possible, but it certainly makes it a lot more complicated. Clearly, he's shown that he's going to fight. He has a legal team around him, especially on the criminal side, that knows how to fight. And we'll see how these things play out.
Ariel, for the victims and for the survivors that you represent, you said one was afraid to talk. She was afraid to speak out after comments started coming in that were very negative towards her. What role is that playing in terms of how you represent them?
I've done this way before Mr. Combs came along. I've had cases against other people, including Trey Songz and Chris Brown and Conor McGregor. So in those situations, most of the time, and I have had yet to have a time, you've never seen any of those victims do any press, mainly because who wants to relive their trauma and recount their trauma for entertainment purposes? That's not indicative of how victims truly act. In these situations, we have a very particularized individual where everyone is essentially coming out about these varying instances they've had with Mr. Combs. So I think a lot of these people in these situations have been silenced for so long, and they do want to come out and speak publicly, but then we have the public who's essentially turning around and making fun of them. So I think there's this fine line between wanting to stand up for yourself and also not wanting to be subject to ridicule. We go about it as lawyers because there's a second aspect that Mr. Hamilton can explain and attest to as well. Anything that our clients say in the press can be used against them in court. It's a statement of a party opponent. So a lot of lawyers are trying to protect their clients from saying anything that can ultimately be used against them in a court of law. So it's a lot of fine lines that everybody's walking. And, no one wants, not me, I'm sure not the federal government, wants to see Mr. Combs be able to get off on the technicality that he was unable to find a fair and impartial jury. But I think that's why everyone, especially in that criminal court case, put the gag order to ensure at least things in that arena are not being reached to the general public, which I think was beneficial for the preservation of that case.
Rob, you did a very powerful post talking about how people really need to look for what is the truth in these situations, but how do they look for the truth, or where do they look for the truth when they're getting their information, when a lot of people are getting their information right off their phone on social media platforms?
Yeah, look, the fact of the matter is when I make my videos, when I do my podcasts, when I do my reports, first of all, I'm very concerned with what the truth is, more so than what can get me the most clicks. We'll find clicks somewhere, somehow, because the business is run on clicks. The more clicks you get, the more money you get for ads. So this is a business. First of all, anybody could buy a blue check on Twitter now. And many of these verified accounts on social media are nothing more than content creators or content aggregators looking to get traffic to make a buck. For me, the media's responsibility in this is truth telling, justice for victims, and protecting against misinformation and disinformation. Now, everybody reports with a bias also. I don't care where you report at, it's just human nature, but you try to check those biases as much as you can. So, just some tips for some people. If you're on Twitter or something, look for outlets, for credible outlets, many of whom have gold certification checks rather than blue ones. Look for legacy outlets that we've known and trusted for generations and years, like CNN, USA Today, the Washington Post, the New York Times. And that's not to say those outlets or those writers can't be biased or they can be a particular slant. It's just the way media works. But you're more likely to get more credible, vetted information through those outlets. And if you really want to go deeper, the indictment is public record. You can read the indictment, you can read the paperwork, you can read these different civil cases yourself if you want to take the time and discern which information is important and pertinent to you.
I want to piggyback off what he said. I think that was very important for a layperson to say, because I think the problem we have is people have no interest in going to read the docket or going on Pacer and downloading the indictment or downloading my civil case or downloading any of the civil case. I've read every civil case that's been filed prior to me filing any of my civil cases. I had read all 8 of them that had been filed prior to me filing my first case. I've read the cases since. And people, they don't want to do that. And all they want to do is read a headline and make a comment. And I think that's the problem that we're running into. Like he said, we have a lot of people who do not have journalistic integrity, who are not journalists by definition. They have the integrity is to the money, not to the actual journalistic, who didn't go to journalism school, didn't study journalism. So we're running into this problem time and time again, where people are not doing their own due diligence and they're not doing their own homework to make intelligent and informed comments. They just want to be part of the peanut gallery.
To Rob's point earlier, when we talk about the business side of this industry and the way in which it operates these days and in the light of social media, I mean, your reputational interest is everything. It really is tangibly financial. And if people are going to come out with untruths or what you allege to be untruths, those people are potentially looking at defamatory actions, being sued for defamation, being sued for libel, because in this day and age, it only takes one bad review. It only takes one bad allegation to, whether it's true or not, potentially derail a career. So, certainly you have a lot of people, a lot of attorneys just with their radar on right now, with everything that's going on in this case in particular, trying to protect the reputational interests of their clients.
In terms of comments that you get on your YouTube podcast, just my thoughts, and also on your social media, especially from that post where you were talking about, let's really just try to look at the facts here. Tell us about some of the reactions you were getting.
I got a lot of support, particularly on YouTube. I have an amazing YouTube community who really like to discuss things and hash things out, even when we don't agree. On the other social media platforms, particularly Twitter or X now, it gets a little more nasty. I think we just got to be careful, especially us in the media. Again, to me, it's about telling the truth. It's about finding justice for victims and putting good information out there.
Phil, this whole guilt by association issue is something that defense lawyers have fought against with a lot of the cases, especially these cases that involve groups of people or these RICO cases. Are you concerned about that, especially with the entrance of AI now?
I can certainly tell you, when we start to think about collateral people that may or may not be popping up, let's just say they're not waiting for the first indictment or the superseding indictment. They've been making phone calls all throughout the bar, dating back to the summer, to just try and make sure that if anything, were to go left as concerns some kind of allegation from a reputational standpoint, from a legal standpoint, from civil, criminal, you name it, arising, that they're ready to go. And, you've had a lot of people that are worried about their names coming up, or, again, I used to associate with you in the past. It didn't necessarily mean that I associated with all of your activities, but I associated with you enough that I may have concerns about at some point getting a subpoena, or at some point getting some kind of notice that I'm under investigation. And those people are making calls. I can certainly tell you that. With respect to the AI, you have a lot of continuing legal education courses like CLEs right now, that it's like a very hot button topic as concerns like AI and how we as legal professionals are dealing with all of these developments that can arise to the, place of either false identifications or, false content that's like
putting
being
people in a certain place at a certain time, like
Exactly.
we saw in the cartel case. He wasn't there, but the timestamp was changed, right?
This is dangerous. Like this is the area where like law and tech are really starting to come together. It's like a very early birth of it, because in a way, I don't think you're going to be able to do our practice in about 5 to 10 years without having the expertise. These things that are being sent around that may or may not be true, that are AI created. And if these things start to find themselves into investigations or into courts of law, that's why at least a lot of the good lawyers, we're making sure that we're kind of making these marriages to tech now as opposed to later, because these are the things that are starting to arise.
And I want to piggyback off of
No, of course, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, talk about what Phil was saying with the holding people accountable. It's different, I feel like, when we're talking about criminal pursuits or civil pursuits. The government, for instance, is the only pursuer of criminal charges. I can't, as a civil litigator, no one can go and file criminal charges. That is up to the state or to the federal government. And with them, they're always looking for the big fish. And that's the part that I kind of don't like. Even like when we talk about somebody like R. Kelly or Harvey Weinstein, they don't go after the bit players. who conspired with them to actually create an environment where they could do this. Diddy didn't do this by himself. He didn't create an environment to do this by himself. He had other people helping him, including regular people and other celebrities. But they typically don't go after them in civil court. And I think that's what we're dealing with here with Mr. Combs is the government wants the head of the organization, and they could care less about the arms, the legs, the stomach, and the rest of the body parts.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on the Diddy credibility crisis. You can watch it again on our Fox 5 NY YouTube page and on your phone on the free Fox 5 NY app. Remember, use your mind. It's your best weapon. I'm Lisa Evers. Let's push for peace, love, and justice for all.